Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, the State House of Representatives votes to repeal an 1864 near total ban on abortion. We'll have the latest. Also tonight, we'll hear from a group opposed to a potential ballot measure to grant abortion rights in Arizona. And a new book looks at the life and legacy of Florence Nightingale. Those stories and more next on Arizona Horizon.
This hour of local news is made possible by contributions from the Friends of PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The Arizona House of Representatives today voted to repeal an 1864 abortion law that was recently reinstated by the state Supreme Court. The vote was 32-28 with 3 Republicans, Matt Gress, Tim Dunn, and Justin Wilmoth, joining Democrats to approve the bill. The repeal now goes to the Senate, where it will be acted on next week. Governor Katie Hobbs today applauded the House vote, saying, quote, "I'm thankful to House Democrats who worked relentlessly for years to repeal this draconian ban. Now the Senate must do the right thing and send this repeal to my desk." Now, prior to the House vote, Arizona's abortion law prompted California Governor Gavin Newsom today to announce a new bill that would allow Arizona abortion providers to be quickly licensed and approved to operate in California.
We are advancing a reciprocity frame that would allow the ability for those healthcare providers in good standing in Arizona to be able to provide that basic care to patients fleeing the state of Arizona into the state of California and support that access here in the state of California.
All this as Arizona Attorney General Kris Mayes is now asking the state Supreme Court to reconsider its decision to uphold the 160-year-old abortion ban. The motion asks the court to either revise or throw out its ruling, claiming that the state court, quote, positioned itself as a court of higher review regarding federal decisions. No response as yet from the court. Mayes has already said that she will not enforce the abortion ban. She was given that authority by Governor Hobbs, who issued an executive order giving the Attorney General's office and not county prosecutors jurisdiction over all abortion-related prosecutions. And the U.S. Supreme Court today heard arguments in an abortion case out of Idaho. At issue is abortion services on pregnant women during emergencies. The Justice Department maintains that federal law requires that hospitals provide abortions, if necessary, to stabilize the health of emergency room patients. Idaho, which has a strict abortion ban, maintains that the DOJ is wrongfully interpreting the federal law in order to create a nationwide abortion mandate in hospital ERs. Here's a sample of today's questioning.
What you are saying is that there is no federal law on the book that prohibits any state from saying, even if a woman will die, you can't perform an abortion.
Your Honor, I know of no state that does not include a life-saving exception. But secondly,
some have been debating it at least. And if I find one, but your theory of this case leads to that conclusion.
I really want a simple, clear-cut answer to this question so that going forward, everybody will know what the federal government's position is. Does health mean only physical health, or does it also include mental health?
Overall, the justices appear deeply divided over the issue. As we mentioned, the Arizona House today passed legislation that calls for the repeal of the state's recently revived 1864 near total ban on abortion. And here to help sort out today's legislative activity is Ben Giles of KJZZ Radio. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So what happened down there at the legislature today?
Well, 3 Republicans, enough Republicans. It was going to take at least 2, but 3 Republicans decided enough is enough. We're going to roll House Speaker Ben Toma, who was doing everything in his power, and he has a lot of power as Speaker, to block a debate or even a vote on this measure to repeal the 1864 ban. But today we saw, again, 2 Republicans. That was enough to buck the majority of the Republican Party, bring this bill up for a vote, and then we saw 3 Republicans who were willing to vote for it to say this ban goes too far.
I was going to say needed 2 and got 3. Surprised about that third vote?
A little surprised, but it's not anyone who we weren't expecting to maybe be a yes on repeal. Matt Grass, State Representative Matt Grass, has been very outspoken since the Arizona Supreme Court ruling that he thinks this should be undone. Dunn and Wilmoth were both rumored to be in favor of repeal, but the question had been, were they willing to take the step to kind of overthrow House Speaker Ben Toma? And what we saw today was Dunn and Grass take that step. And then after that was done, Wilmoth also step up and say, I want to repeal this ban.
Indeed, we got Gress saying that the law is unworkable and out of line with values of Arizonans. Dunn sounded like he was more concerned about the ramifications of this, that if it were to stay into place, the Citizens Initiative, which is being worked on, would likely grant more abortion rights and he would be comfortable with. Does that sound about right?
Well, the Citizens Initiative will tell you that this Arizona Supreme Court ruling has been a shot in the arm to their campaign, to their signature gathering effort, which is still ongoing to collect enough signatures to qualify for this roughly 24-week abortion ban to be on the ballot in November. They have, as of earlier this month, 500,000 signatures, well more than they would need to qualify. They're aiming for about 800,000 signatures. And there's been increases in volunteer efforts to help with that campaign. The Arizona Supreme Court's ruling really galvanized that campaign.
And we're going to hear more about that initiative and those who are opposed to that initiative coming up here later in the show. But as far as the arguments today, for and against, we got Jacqueline Parker, complete betrayal of everything Arizona stands for and has always stood for. Rachel Jones, I'm disgusted today. And Speaker Toma said he was deeply disappointed, and he made some moves, didn't he? Didn't he take someone, I think he put Gress off of a committee, the Budget Committee, right?
He took Gress off the Budget Committee during floor action shortly after the vote to repeal. He also removed the Democratic minority leader from the Budget Committee as well. That leader was responsible for holding the Democratic caucus together and ensuring that all 29 votes were there to supplement the 3 votes from Republicans. So there's not a ton you can do to punish your members, but taking members off committees, particularly the Appropriations Committee, which at some point in May or June should be debating a budget, is certainly a big move.
Okay, as far as the arguments for and against, how passionate was it down there?
You heard a lot of passion, particularly from those who are opposed to abortion rights. The vast majority of the Republican caucus in the Arizona House viewed the Supreme Court's ruling as a huge victory for the anti-abortion movement, that this is the culmination of years, of decades of work to make sure that this 1864 ban not only stays in place, but remember in 2022, when they passed a 15-week ban, they explicitly included language in that law that said, our intent is for this territorial 1860s ban to take effect if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, which it did later that summer.
And that was key to the Supreme Court's decision. They basically said it's right there in statute. I mean, it's clear as a bell.
Which is why I was a little surprised, frankly, at the motion to reconsider from Attorney General Chris Mays the other night. She argued in that motion essentially that the justices read into the intent of lawmakers wrong. And I'm struggling to wrap my head around that because there's a literal intent clause that the justices could look to and say, this is what the lawmakers wanted to happen.
Right, yeah, it'd be very difficult to argue against that considering it's right there in black and white. All right, this bill, then there's some confusion here because last week the Senate went ahead and introduced this and got the ball rolling on a repeal bill. Now the House goes ahead and votes to repeal. Do they send this bill over to the Senate? Is what the Senate's working on continue to go? You got to have 3 reads, 3
Sure.
days worth of reading here. And they had the second read today in the Senate, correct?
Right. The Senate had a second read on its version, which is an identical version to the bill sponsored by Stephanie Stahl Hamilton that passed in the House today. But the way the legislature works is bills have to pass in both chambers, the Senate and the House, or the House, then the Senate. Because these bills are identical, there's a mechanism that the Senate could potentially take next week to say, okay, we have this bill that's identical to the one the House just passed a week ago. We're going to substitute in the House bill and take a final vote on that House bill. So that would be the motion that folks in favor of repeal are going to be pushing to make next Wednesday. They are going to try to sub in the Stahl-Hamilton bill from the House, take a vote on that, and then they send it back to the House, and the House would send it to the governor's office, where she's promised to sign it.
Yeah, it's so fascinating here that the ramifications of all of this is we'll see down the line.
And there's no guarantee, again, that the Senate will take action next week.
Yes.
That is going to likely take a similar motion first to roll the Senate president, as Republicans voted to roll House Speaker Ben Toma over his objections today.
And we should mention it's next week because the Senate has decided, and the House, that they're going to meet once a week because there wasn't all that much to do. Well, I guess it seems like there's a lot to do now.
They had a lot on their plate after the Supreme Court ruling.
Real quickly, last question. Even if this passes, even if the governor signs it, it's not emergency here, so it doesn't take effect immediately. You got to wait 90 days for this thing to be effective.
Not just 90 days after the governor signs it, it would be 90 days after the legislature convenes for the year.
Yes.
Which they're not going to do right away because they still have to pass a spending plan for the upcoming fiscal year. So there is still a situation where I believe the Attorney General's office said the 1864 ban would take effect in early June. That is likely going to happen before this repeal takes effect, again, 90 days after lawmakers gavel out for the year.
Might be interested to see how much slow rolling goes on there at the Capitol to make sure that this takes effect. Fascinating stuff. Ben Giles, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Next time. At a scarecrow festival, a woman is found murdered.
Ligature strangulation with a thin wire.
A reporter covering the festival,
obviously there's a bigger story here now,
has a history with Jamie.
It was a long time ago.
And Barnaby doesn't want her anywhere near the case.
I want you to track down your girlfriend and sort this out.
It's not my...
Sort it out.
Midsummer Murders.
Thursday night at 8 on Arizona PBS.
Next time on Father Brown.
Let's live dangerously.
A race car driving free spirit has a lot of enemies. And when she's killed on the track, there's no shortage of suspects, including a confession.
I killed her.
Father Brown doesn't think things add up.
That looks like blood. She was killed inside the car.
But Inspector Sullivan has finally had enough.
You've been a thorn in my side ever since I stepped into this parish.
Father Brown.
Saturday night at 7 on Arizona PBS.
Last week, we heard from a group gathering signatures to put abortion rights on the November ballot. Tonight, we hear from a group called It Goes Too Far, which is opposed to that initiative effort. And joining us now is Joanna De La Cruz with It Goes Too Far. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ted, for having me.
It Goes Too Far. Why that title?
Because this amendment simply goes too far. We're a campaign that's made up of individuals from across the political spectrum, pro-life individuals, pro-choice individuals, and we've all come together to say, we have a number of beliefs on where the limits on abortion should be, but we all believe that there should be some common sense limits. And this amendment simply has none. In fact, it simply couldn't be more extreme in expanding abortion. If you're someone who believes that a doctor should be a required part of the abortion process, if you believe that parents should be in the know, if you believe that there should be some limit based on fetal development, if you believe that safety standards and regulations should be in place to protect women, then this amendment is not for you.
The act, the proponents say that it protects pregnant patients in the state. It protects those patients. Are they wrong?
They are. In fact, it does exactly the opposite. Under this amendment, it would be almost impossible for long-standing safety precautions that protect the health of women and girls to stand. And one of those is the required medical doctor. Actually, if you read the amendment, you will not find the word doctor or physician anywhere in this amendment. In fact, in Section 3A2, it changes it to healthcare professional, which under Arizona law actually refers to a whole list of individuals from chiropractors to acupuncturists to massage therapists to physical therapists to your daughter's school nurse. It's quite a broad term. And the medical doctor, such a critical part of the doctor-patient relationship would simply be no longer required.
So, as far as viability, this is obviously a determining point here. They are saying that viability is determined by medical professionals and by the pregnant woman. You saying that's, how do you respond to that?
So that's a common misconception and a common way that voters are being deceived, frankly, by the proponents of this amendment. They know that if they put in there a straight abortion until birth, that Arizona voters would not be in favor of that. So they've tried to put in what looks like a limit at viability, but is in fact in practice not a limit, because this mental health exception, this health exception, we know based on over 50 years of precedent, starting with the Doe v. Bolton ruling in 1973, is quite liberally construed to mean anything from a financial situation to the age of the mother to simply experiencing stress. So really it's a rubber stamp for anything that the provider, in this case not even necessarily a medical doctor, wants it to be.
So when they say that it's determined by using accepted clinical standards and evidence-based medicine, you're saying that's not enough?
We're saying attorneys that have looked at this have said that is too vague. We don't know what that means, and that's simply going to allow a rubber stamp for abortions up until birth. It's vague language.
After viability, the Act calls for options to protect life and the physical and mental health, as you referred to. Should those options not be there?
What should be happening is that voters should be told the full facts about this amendment. They should be told that in practice under this amendment, abortion would be allowed all the way until birth with simply a rubber stamp from an individual who may not be a medical doctor. That's what voters need to know, and frankly, they're not being told. And I think it's disrespectful to Arizona voters to ask them to put something in the Arizona Constitution that would be almost permanent and that would have long consequences for women and girls for years to come, and not respect them enough to give them those facts. Arizona women deserve better.
It seems like a sticking point here is medical health care professionals. You're not seeing them there, they are seeing them there, correct?
Actually, Arizona law defines that term. So if you look at the term treating healthcare professional in Arizona law, all those individuals I mentioned, chiropractors, acupuncturists, podiatrists, those are all individuals that are covered under that term. And proponents knew exactly what that term meant when they crafted this amendment.
The idea that families and medical providers and not politicians should decide on reproductive health, that is also a major factor as far as this initiative is concerned. Is that wrong?
Voters should decide on these issues based on having all of the facts in front of them. As Arizonans, we think for ourselves, we're independent thinkers, and we like to be respected enough to be given the information. The number of ways that proponents are deceiving voters simply goes on and on. Another one of those is miscarriage care. They are scaring women and telling them that without this amendment, they'll not be able to get miscarriage care, and that's simply false. Women can get miscarriage care today, they'll be able to get it tomorrow. And by conflating miscarriage care with abortion, that's just another way that they're trying to deceive Arizona voters who, if they were honest, would just not be supportive of this amendment.
Do you support the legislature sending referrals to put more things on the ballot? Because the line of thinking is the more things you put on the ballot, the more confused the voters are going to be. What do you think about that idea from lawmakers?
Well, I know there's been a lot said publicly about what they may and may not do. Again, our coalition is made up of people with varying views on where limits should be. We're focused on this amendment and that this amendment goes too far, and we're going to continue educating voters about that across the state all the way up until November.
Last question, did the Supreme Court's ruling, the state Supreme Court's ruling, how did that affect your operations? I mean, I would think you'd be concerned.
It's actually given us even more opportunities to educate voters. Voters are talking about this, they're wanting to understand what's going on with this initiative, and we're there to educate them and show them the language and say, hey, this goes too far.
Joanna De La Cruz, it goes too far. We're glad to get you on the program and heard your thoughts. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ted. Thank you.
Florence Nightingale is credited with creating modern nursing with her theories on hygiene and living standards. She's also known for reducing mortality rates as she trained nurses to treat soldiers in the Crimean War. ASU Professor Emeritus Melissa Pritchard has written a book on the life of Florence Nightingale. The book is titled Flight of the Wild Swan, and we welcome Melissa Pritchard to Arizona Horizon. We should note that she'll be at Changing Hands Bookstore in Tempe on Monday, April 29th, 7 p.m. Mm-hmm. One of your old haunts there at Changing Hands, huh?
Yes.
Who was Florence Nightingale?
Florence Nightingale was an extraordinary woman, born in 1820 at the height of the British Empire. She was contemporary with Queen Victoria. They were about the same age. And she was born into an elite family and had an experience at the age of 16 where she felt a voice called to her. She thought it was God asking her to serve the suffering of the world, to serve the suffering people of the world. And it was a mystical experience, and everybody has a different interpretation of it. I think she probably did have something like that, but that changed her entire life. She'd always been interested in nursing, even as a child, in collections and numbers, and the embryonic Florence was there as a child, but this voice that she heard, somewhat like Joan of Arc or something, it changed her whole life and her focus. And so she decided she wanted to be a nurse, which was about the most disreputable thing you could ask to be in Victorian England.
I was going to say, explain more about that.
Yes. Well, nursing at that point in her life, mid-19th century, a nurse came from the lower classes, a woman who could get no other occupation. A nurse was considered slightly better than an actress, but only a half cut above being a prostitute. I mean, it was a terrible. Charles Dickens characterized the nurse in Sari Gamp, as in the figure of Sari Gamp in Martin Chuzzlewit, the novel, as this gin-soddled woman that muttering and, morally compromised, and just, it was a horrible thing to say you wanted to be. And so Florence goes to her parents, who want her to be married and have children, and particularly a son, so that everyone can keep their wealth and their land.
Sure.
And she said, I want to be a nurse. And there was nothing worse you could say you wanted to be. So she had to overcome so many objections, beginning with her family and moving on to the patriarchy.
But we don't think of nursing like that anymore.
No,
and in great deal we don't because
of Florence Nightingale. She is responsible she founded the first school of training for nurses in the world in 1860 at St. Thomas Hospital, where it became a secularized, professionalized, respected and paid position. Nurses wore uniforms, nurses took classes, studied rigorous course study. She changed the entire face of nursing.
And she did so with a scientific mindset, and yet, as you mentioned, she was a visionary, she was kind of a mystic. I was going to ask, how come you wrote about Florence Nightingale, but now I'm asking, how come everyone doesn't write about Florence? That's a lot going on there.
I know. When I had the decision to write about her when I was at the Florence Nightingale Museum at St. Thomas Hospital in 2013. I was there doing something else, and I went to the museum, and I just was overcome by her life and everything that was there, and I just stood there. I said, I'm going to write a novel about her. So I bought all the books in the museum, that the museum had in their gift shop. I bought everything short of the paper dolls and the coloring books. I took them all home to Arizona, where I was at the time. And I didn't get to them for another 6 years, but the more I did research on Florence, the more in awe of her I became, and the more she's a supremely inspirational figure.
And you mentioned the word novel. Now, is it a historical novel? Is it a biography? What is it, somewhere in between, a collection of letters? What is this?
It's called an historical biography. They label it that, or sometimes they label it historical fiction. And it is, I use some of her letters, some of her correspondence, but also I made up a lot of my own letters. So it's really a compendium. It's mostly fiction. I would say primarily fiction, but based on fact. I really wanted it to be based on fact.
Did you feel her with you as you wrote?
Sometimes, sometimes, but yes, all of a sudden I would sort of feel her guiding me towards something. Don't miss this scene or that character. And in this past September 2023, I actually went to Scutari. I went to Istanbul, and I visited the museum where her hospital had been. So I actually got to see the quarters where she and her 38 nurses worked and lived.
Yes.
And I really did feel her presence there. I didn't expect to. I didn't know what I would,
Yeah.
I really, at one point, and standing in front of her desk and her chair, I felt a physical force almost.
In that respect, did immersing yourself into her life, did that change your life?
It did. It really did. At first I went through a period of getting very excited about writing about her. Then I became intimidated, like, what was I thinking? What in the world was I thinking? You could spend your life studying Florence Nightingale, and people have, biographers. But then I just kept going. I felt compelled. I felt called to write this book. And as I made my way through it, I became more and more really impressed with her courage, her fearlessness, her willing to do what's right, And
I would be remiss if we didn't mention, again, you mentioned the patriarchy and I referred to it in the past, but she was dealing in a very different world than we're living in right now.
Yes, I had to keep moving into that world and away from the world we're in now and going, oh my God. So when she went to the Crimean War in 1854 with 38 nurses, when she got there, she was not welcomed. Yeah. British women had never served as nurses in wartime. They were never, so the French had some women nurses, but Never. So she was up against that obstacle too. They called her the bird. They didn't want her there until they met her. Then she persisted. She was incredibly persistent.
Yes.
Determined, more brilliant than many of them. And she got the whole hospital up and running.
And thus the flight of the wild swan. Melissa Pritchard, thank you so much for congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
And it's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much.
That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona PBS deeply appreciates every gift we receive, and we are proud to take this moment and recognize our Executive Society. These supporters believe in the mission of public media and are making a real impact in our community. If you would like to make an annual